I have heard the phrase, more money, more problems. And it's probably likely that Biggie didn't have the proper financial advice or financial advisor. So taxes are going to be one of the biggest line items in most people's expenses that are very often overlooked or not even really considered in their overall cash flow and financial considerations. And if you look at just, the average person paying taxes, it's because they're a W-2 employee for the most part. And all of those withholdings are happening before they receive their paycheck. And a lot of that is just phantomly going right to the government and they never really even see it. And so when it comes to tax season and they're starting to calculate their overall tax situation, it's shocking when you see that you've paid 60, 70, 100, 250,000 or more in taxes to the IRS or your state governments. Tax planning to me is one of the most important aspects of long-term financial success. And for many people, they work with a CPA or enrolled agent or somebody that's going to do their taxes for them. But what a lot of people miss is that that's looking in the rear view. We want to look out the windshield and see what's happening next. And we can make that as a best of a prediction as we possibly can. Now, I don't take the place of your tax professional, CPA, enrolled agent, but what I do with our clients at 4 Points Wealth is we try to look at your previous tax year and then say, okay, well, what's changed? What's happening in your financial life this year that is either the same or different, so we can then plan on that. In addition to that, if we know that there's going to be events that are going to happen in the future years, we can start planning on that, whether that's the sunsetting of various tax regulations, or if you know that there might be an exit, whether that's a real estate project that you're working on, maybe your company's gonna have an IPO in the next few years. There's a lot of things that you can do as far as looking out and planning and strategizing for those future events. Oftentimes, more money does result in more problems. And if you do it right, it's not more problems, it's just greater complexity. And if you're not prepared for it, then that's where those problems can exist. And so what I see with a lot of people that are either going through big jumps in their income or inherit money or somehow acquire greater wealth in a very short period of time is that they don't have the right strategies in place, and they also don't have the right behavior in place to then deal with that greater wealth and that greater income. So working with 4 Points Wealth, we talk a lot about your relationship with money. That can dictate and help me understand what people are trying to do and ultimately what path we're going to take when it comes to managing your overall financial life. One of the principles that I focus on at 4 Points Wealth is this idea of mindful wealth. And for mindful wealth, that really entails being intentional with the money that you have. And when I meet people that have had some sort of an event where they come into a lot of money, what recently has happened is people are inheriting more money from their family because we're starting to see that boomer generation get older, they're starting to pass away, and the millennials are stand to inherit a significant amount of that generation's wealth. And one of the things that we look at is treat yourself, flat out. There's no reason not to treat yourself in some capacity, because what that does is that can scratch that itch that you have. If it's buying a new pair of shoes or potentially buying a new car, but it also could be maybe getting rid of some debt that you have. There are some things that you can do that might be hanging in the background that you can do so with intention. And if you get that out of the way, then we can start thinking about what's the next opportunity. The other thing that I look at, especially for those folks that inherit money, is being good stewards of that money. It's likely that the parents earned that money and they worked their butt off. And now it's the next generation's responsibility to also then usher that money into the next generation if possible. So being a good steward and thinking about it outside of yourself can be hugely important, because then it's not just about you and not being so selfish. It's thinking about, well, gosh, I could give this to my kids, or even, gosh, my grandkids, or a cousin, or a niece or a nephew. And if you can serve somebody else with that same dollar, it can actually be hugely beneficial to both who you are as an individual, as well as just the legacy that you pass on. As you know, teamwork makes the dream work. And it's imperative to have the right people on your team to ensure that all of the other facets of your financial life are taken care of. So what I look at when it comes to the teams that I'm involved in with some of those higher net worth families is they have a strong relationship with their attorney. And typically that's going to be an estate planning attorney. But if they're business owners, it's oftentimes their business attorney, somebody that is going to know the ins and outs of the legal issues that they're specifically related to. Another person that's always going to be big is going to be a good quality accountant. Your accounting professional can help guide you with tax planning if possible, but also just making sure that you're going to be taken care of and that the IRS isn't going to come knocking on your door and asking for more money, because that can certainly be an issue. But other people that can be really helpful is obviously your financial advisor is going to be huge. And then, how are you managing your assets? So looking at those various facets of your life. And then also whoever you marry, that's going to be a big element to your overall financial success. Unfortunately, here in the United States, we have about a 50% likelihood that most people that get married are going to get a divorce. And choosing your spouse on the front end is incredibly important. And a lot of times people are not having the right conversations with their soon-to-be spouse. And so all of a sudden, when they're married and they're in it, they have different values around money. They have a different experience with money. And all of a sudden, one might be a saver and one might be a spender. And guess what? Those two things can really combat each other, and that can result in, and has resulted in, many, many, many divorces. They say that money can't buy happiness. And the reality is that that's probably true at a fundamental level. But there are reports that suggest that there is a level that it does create a little bit more happiness. And I think the number is for an individual somewhere in the $70,000 to $80,000 range. But what I find is that when you earn more money, you have more choice. You have more opportunity to use that money in your benefit. It doesn't necessarily mean that it creates more problems. As I mentioned before, it creates a little bit more complexity. But if you're not making money because you think that's inherently evil or it's not the right thing, then I think you're misguided in that belief. But making more money can be huge because it can support your family, it can support your parents if they're aging, and it can support a lifestyle that can bring you massive fulfillment. Thanks for watching today. If you like following along, turn on your notifications or like and subscribe. Add your questions and comments in the notes below, and that helps me create better video and better content to help you succeed in your financial future.